Hi everyone, and welcome to the Global Exclusive Podcast. I'm Muspel, and joining me this week we have Dream, and we're going to be talking about the new units this week. We've got a Global Exclusive unit, Skye, and NVA Sigurd, and then we'll also be talking a little bit about Clash of Wills, which this is the second time it's come around. Dream, which unit do you want to talk about first?
We will get the beautifully underwhelming one out of the way first, I say.
Okay. Which one is that?
That would be the NVA, the cheap one to get, Seacard.
Okay. Yeah, Sigurd is... Do you feel like Gladio was the sweet spot for NVAs, where he's, boring enough that no one cares, but good enough that you can't completely ignore him?
I mean, yeah, kind of.
Yeah, Sigurd is basically the same thing.
Yeah, he's I think he's most comparable to, a budget version of Behemi, because he's, only a little bit less bulky than Behemi with his natural mitigations, though obviously Behemi's a bit easier to, increase that externally. He's got, a tiny bit of utility with AoE LB fill and stuff, and he has preemptive physical cover, which can enable some, re-raise stuff, or be annoying in arena.
The difference to me is Behemi is squishier than most of the other NV tanks because he has crazy utility. Sigurd doesn't have that. He really just feels to me like a downgrade from Gladio in most ways. He can defend and Gladio can't, but...
Yeah, for trial stuff he's usually probably a step down. Though again, AoE 10 fill that he can potentially double cast on a fair few turns if he doesn't need to defend isn't bad, especially with how LB centric a lot of things are. But it's not great. And especially where is the content to use these physical tanks on that actually need?
Yeah, he probably could do Asura or Genies, and I'm sure a bunch of people still haven't cleared those. But
I think for you might need some external mitigation support for physical mit for him to actually do them. He'll probably struggle a bit for survival, but he can do the because of the preemptive cover, he can do the raise plus re-raise strat on Genies, but that does dedicate a whole second team slot, which makes it a bit harder to clear the turn limit.
Yeah, you could also just bring some Esperfill stuff and evoke Golem on turn 1 or something. It's obviously not as good as having Gabranth or Behemi or whatever for Genies, but he would still be better than pretty much any non-NV tank. Well, better than any non-NV tank, period.
I just still think it might be even once more set up a bit, he might kind of struggle slightly to reach that bulk threshold you need. Might be a bit borderline.
Yeah. I figure I would also mention, we said that he's squishier than other tanks, which is true. Against Asura specifically, which is half the reason for physical tanks to exist, he's better than you would think because he has huge human mitigation buffs in his Brave Shift. And Asura is half human.
True.
So, good fit for that fight.
But he can only stay in his Brave Shift for 4 turns out of 8.
Yeah.
Which isn't so great.
But you don't necessarily need this to be active the whole time, so I think you can make it work. It'll take some planning, it'll take some doing, but it's very reasonable overall, probably.
One other fairly unique tool he does have that would kind of be useful on Asura is his one-use Grandis on his shift imbues the enemy with Earth for a turn, which then he can absorb, so all physical attacks from a boss for 1 turn you can just negate if they're coverable, or if you have your whole team Earth resistant and they're uncoverable, that'll make you immune for a turn. But being a one-use Grandis, and 1 turn duration, it's a bit limited on how much you can do it long term.
Yeah, but one turn of full immunity is still pretty good.
Yes. Just as a bit of a tangent to this, and speaking of Asura and stuff, in JP, their version of Grimlord Sakura has a similar one for Dark, but on a 6-turn cooldown instead of a Grandis. So one day I still wanted to see 6 of them versus Asura, just cycling one each turn to remain completely immune to all the physical. But that requires something like 40 copies of her.
Yeah, that does not sound
so
fun.
I don't know if I'll see it anytime soon.
A couple other things to note about him. He has a field effect, which is, I think, a 25% Earth Imperil.
Yeah, I think so.
The wiki doesn't have
Shift LB.
the description for it. It just has this Japanese name, but I'm told that's what it is. What else? There was something else I was going to mention. I don't remember what it was. Oh yeah, he has 100% Passive Provoke in his base form. This is probably a downside in most cases, honestly.
Yeah, now that Moogle Charm's permanent, I think I would actually agree.
Yeah. And the other problem is that his 75% mitigation skill has 100% active provoke stapled onto it. So if he's on your team and he's tanking, he will be targeted by everything that is single target. Just flat out. It's basically impossible for it to function any other way. And on some fights, that can be a problem. Luckily, it's...
Like Genies.
Yeah, well, is it a problem on Genies?
Yeah, you need like a really resistant
provoke
tank for the single target magic.
Target thing. Yeah, so maybe he's not a good fit there.
And you can't, for that and physical bulk. But again, you can still do the raise plus re-raise if necessary.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't matter.
So...
But he probably won't be provoking there anyway, because he won't be using active skills. He'll just be dying and preemptive covering every turn.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So that's a bit of an edge case.
And then I guess the other thing to talk about is his TM and STMR, which, unusually for a unit this old, are both pretty good. His TM is still one of the better tank materia out there. It's not amazing, really, but almost every tank materia is unstackable, and this one gives a mix of stats, which is decent, and it gives LB fill rate, and tanks sometimes have decent LBs, gives some resists. I don't think this is the kind of thing where you're thrilled to have a ton of copies of it, but, having a couple copies is not bad. And then his STMR benefited from the shield buffs a while back. It's got 185 defense, 30% HP. That's already great. It also has 80% earth resist, so sometimes that'll be good.
Yeah. So yeah, for either earth resist or just physical EHP, it's both very solid for that.
And that's pretty much all there is to say about him.
Again, for all those fights that you need to bulk up your tanks.
Yeah. So he's decent enough. Just I guess I'm not sure how many people have 7 copies of Seacard but don't have an NV based physical tank.
Yeah.
So I don't know how relevant.
I am very whelmed by him.
More or less, yeah.
Oh yeah. We mentioned the AoE cover thing for Arena briefly, but the other Arena thing he has is his basic attack upgrade. AoE chain with 80% charm, so enjoy. Make all of your teams charm resistant.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about the Earth. Now we can talk about the Skye.
Yeah, the unit that's, actually designed for modern content.
Yeah. Oh, hang on. With Seacard, we should mention his ability enhancement weirdness thing. So in GL, he got global exclusive ability enhancements, ability awakenings. Remember?
Yeah, and that's true. He had 13 enhancements.
They haven't fixed this yet, right? One of them was for the passive that in JP they turned that into his auto cover, his auto cast AoE cover. It used to be his passive cover. Now it's his AoE auto cast cover. But in GL, if it's ability awakened +2, it doesn't do the auto cast cover.
Oh, that's quite a big issue. Seems that's half his utility.
Yeah, as far as I know, that has not been fixed. I'm not sure if they are going to fix it. Hang on, let me check the wiki page and see if it says anything about this.
Doesn't look like.
Yeah, it looks like it's... Because before, the problem was Seacard had a passive single target cover, which newer players might not be familiar with this. It's a thing that you saw on some really old units, and it was fucking awful, because it meant that you might jump in front of somebody else and stop them from AoE covering, or sometimes it could even mess with your own AoE cover. That was always a little strange. It shouldn't have worked that way, but it did. So they replaced it with a stat passive. It was a tiny stat passive, but just getting rid of the passive cover was a good thing. But now you're getting the stat passive instead of auto-cast AoE cover, which is largely a downgrade. So
much better, yeah. And that skill is Noble Stance,
yes.
By the way. If anyone's
so if you have multiple copies of Seacard, and they like aren't STMR'd or something, and one is ability awakened, maybe consider awakening to NVA the one that does not have ability awakenings, and do not upgrade Noble Stance. Maybe. Like, they might fix this.
Or hope they fix
Who
it.
knows? But yeah. Okay, now we can talk about Skye.
But back on track with the good unit. So, Skye can either kind of do one of two things, or I guess kind of three, but not really. So she can either be a slightly stronger Wind Noctis, or a slightly weaker Zidane, or in Clash of Wills, a much stronger Zidane.
Would you call her literal Wind Noctis?
Not quite. Because she has the whole TDH but hits twice thing, so her gearing
I'm honestly
is different,
surprised
but,
that works. Like, mechanically.
Yeah.
I went in to test it to make sure, because I was sure this was not going to work the way that Gumi thought it would. Because, like, why does it work? Because it's an ability.
Well, I think...
And the second caster for normal attack shouldn't trigger because the first one takes her out of the battlefield. I don't know.
But it does... Nah, because it works for, like, other basic attack upgrade skills, like all the chains.
Yeah, but those
stuff.
don't remove you from the battle. Like, this isn't like a skill that triggers. This is a jump. It's an effect with a delayed thing. I don't know. I wonder if it was difficult to get it to work, basically, or if it just already worked.
Well, I think they've borrowed a parameter from, like, at least for making it unaffected by dual wield, they've borrowed a parameter from JP as well, because I think it was like Titus, like base Titus's just 7-star upgrade that we skipped has a passive that makes like his normal attack hit 6 times, but that's not doesn't get affected by any like dual wield, and obviously that overwrites the normal attacks hit 2 times as well, same way the 3 times ones that we've seen on the past do. So I think they use the parameter for that, for making it not hit twice with dual wield at least. Okay,
yeah. So she does pretty high burst damage. 1 second, I'm pulling up a damage sheet to get exact numbers. So she bursts about 33% harder than Noctis.
Yeah. I think the problem with that comparison from the wiki sheet is that's Noctis without his Chronicle weapons. Yeah. So it'll be closer in practice. Yeah. But yeah, she's like a slightly stronger Noctis with her jump, and that's all pretty impressive, but that's wind locked. And then her shift LB is like a 3-stacking one, like Zidane, that maxes out at, I think, 245 without morale, and 705 with morale.
The other thing I would point out is that Noctis, like, when you look at his damage on most spreadsheets, he's going to have, like, his own light amp, which is, I think, 15%, 10%. Skye has a 50% amp, so if you bring Aerith with Noctis, then Noctis gets a bigger boost because he's going from a 15% amp to 45% or whatever it is Aerith gives. So
yeah, but if you are if you're bringing Aerith and stuff, then maybe if you don't want light, but then if you bring an LB buff but stronger than her 200% innate one, her shift LB actually maxes out at slightly higher mods than her jump.
Yeah.
And that's also elementally flexible, which hence the Zidane comparison.
Yeah, and yeah, I know I kind of sidetracked this because you just said this, but her LB in morale battles does hit very hard. If you max out the morale gauge, it's going to be 700 5x, you said? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's obviously before all of the, 300% passive and 2 to 300% active buff.
So yeah, considering that Tifa has how much?
350 a Tifa and Sephiroth.
Okay, so we're probably looking at somewhere in the range of 9 billion-ish damage, I'm assuming.
Well, it'll be like a lot closer than it appears on mods, because remember, Skye has no flat attacks.
Yeah.
Tifa and Seph have 2,000, which just warps things
I'm looking at the wiki sheets where they don't have that. So.
Oh yeah, no. But then in wiki sheets, why are you looking at morale damage?
Well, no, I was just saying, if you're talking about a morale battle, Tifa is going to burst for 6 billion. Skye is probably, I would imagine, somewhere between 8 and 10. I would need to do some actual calculations, but just eyeballing it, that would be my guess.
It's very rough. But yeah, basically, I think, and she's kind of custom fitted to this one, obviously, with it being wind as its biggest weakness, and I think races she has killers for as well. Yeah, Dragon and Reaper. But because that LB is elementless, she'll be a good pick for at least a couple of future morale
assuming they
battles
don't
as
start
well.
doing like mage-only morale battles.
Oh god.
I mean,
with the fact that JP has basically only been releasing physical units for 3 months, that would be a bad idea.
Are you saying that Alum started listening to our podcast, but they're only listening to the old episodes where I complained about mages all the time?
They're only listening to the bad parts. And taking the worst parts away, having the worst takeaways from it.
I just noticed that her base form LB has the Berserk on it.
Yeah, but it's the mod for it's not that high, so
I don't get why they do that thing instead of just giving the unit a 450% attack buff. I know it makes it stack with Aerith or whatever, but still.
Yeah, it's interesting, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. It has an extreme Nova Chain, but again, you're probably not going to use the base form at all, really, because the shift form just kind of does everything better. Both the LB and the mod boosts for her jump are in the shift form, so you kind of want to use it either way. I feel
it's very strange to see an LB with multiple parts like this.
You do see it occasionally, Awakened Dragon Axter, one of his LBs is 2-component. I remember that one. There are a few, but it's not super common. They usually just weighted instead.
But yeah, she does damage. She also has an 87% attack and defense break. Since it's not attack and magic, she's not going to replace your breaker typically, but the 87% defense break can boost your damage compared to whatever else you got.
Yeah, that'll increase a bit. And 30% Spare Imperial will help boost both her own damage, because her preferred weapon with that is probably Mazurka's STMR, but yeah, it can potentially boost some other units as well if you've got stuff that can equip Longness or Win. I think there's a DV Spear coming soon.
I'm trying to think of what other units would want to use spears. Arden and Noctis want Ultimate Blade, Sephiroth wants his Katana, Tifa. You could give her Equipped Spear, but why would you? She already has a Fist in Peril.
Well, yeah. I don't know, maybe some dual wielders might be able to. Can Zidane equip spears naturally?
I think so.
Probably not. They're probably too big for his small body.
But they're kind of falling behind.
Yeah, they could get it. Yeah, they're more of a utility chainer than a main damage dealer these days. Which they're still pretty nice at, to be honest. Still bring them a fair amount. Could be
something that ends up being relevant again with future units, though. Spears have always felt like a weird weapon type to me, because it feels like they're always 2 steps away from being top tier, but then Alum or Gumi forgets about them for a year and a half, and then they're oh shit, right, spears, and then they release some really good spear stuff, and then they stop right as it's getting close to what it needs.
Yeah, Longinus for a while was the highest attack weapon
Longinus was a high attack weapon. We had before that there was the time when Veritas of the Heavens TM was one of the very few 50% attack materia that was easily available, because it was a 4-star TM. And then there was Jiraga's TM, which was 70% attack as a 4-star TM when that was STMR level.
Yeah, there's been a couple good ones. Yeah. It's it gets occasional support, but then weirdly drops off. But I think that there should be a DV Spear coming.
Do they have that
soon.
in JP?
But JP actually has a DV weapon for almost every type at this point. There's only a couple missing.
Yeah, and luckily spears aren't one of those types that have a terrible item world thing, which is a problem in GL that JP doesn't have.
Well, they kind of do, but they've got the generic res to balance it out. So we are
at this point, I don't think
an item
we're
world
getting
update.
that.
So
JP, for those that don't know, at one point added it so that a lot of the rares for various weapons can appear on any weapon. I think the 35% attack and magic passive.
Yeah, I think it was just that one and 2 of the defensive one, HP plus Spirit or whatever, and one other one from
and I think at this point we're 4 or 5 months overdue for that. Yeah, so it's probably not coming.
Yeah. So I don't know if our item world's being updated.
I mean,
unfortunately, because I think the rare rates increased with that
honestly,
update
I don't
as well
mind
in
not
GP.
feeling like I have to rerun all of my weapons.
Yeah, that's fair, I guess, but like, it's still only an improvement, or only a potential improvement. The downside of it is purely mental.
There's something to be said for protecting players from themselves.
That's fair. But one other spear-related thing she has is a spear-based break bar skill, because apparently Gumi didn't get the memo that Alum is done with that toy and has forgotten about it, and it's never coming back.
Sorry, I missed what you said. What was that?
She's got a spear break bar skill, but Alum are done with break bars. They've decided they're not fun anymore after like 2 months.
But the discussion is winding down, and that means you all know that it's time to talk about the TM and STMR and Vision card, the most exciting part of the unit. Her Vision card is another one of these slightly power-capped versions where it has 110 attack.
The short answer is they're all jump gear.
The card isn't necessarily just that.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, when you're not using it on a jumper, it's usually just slightly worse than
Lings. But to be fair, Lings is the best attack card in the game aside from Sephiroth's, which basically nobody has. So,
well, Seth and Tifa's, but the thing is, like, now with, like, everyone's got at least one with Aerith, potentially more with Tifa and Sephiroth, you can use those or VC select tickets to just pick a Link card, so it's pretty easy to get.
True, although some people might have picked the Louises instead.
Yeah, that's true, but like either or. And then but if you're using it on an FFBE jumper, i.e. Skye, then it adds 100 jump damage, which is pretty significant. And then her TM is a good attack hat with jump damage. Her STMR is a good attack accessory with jump damage. And physical killers, actually, so that's nice outside of jumpers.
Her TM also gives her specifically Wind Absorb, which is...
It's
not useless. Like, normally for units like this, that would be terrible because they're element locked, but she's not element locked. So, like, she's potentially not using wind, and enemies that use wind tend to be resistant to it. But you might be fighting something that does use wind and is not weak to it. So, that can be relevant.
And actually hits your damage dealers for some reason.
Yeah, and I think her accessory is actually one of the best, like, accessory damage dealer things we've seen in a while, because it has the killers on it. Like, even if you ignore the jump damage, 50% killers for 2 races is... Like, that's why Photon Core is amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, it's tied in attack with Zenaida's SDMR as well, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly a very nice accessory.
I would go so far as to say that this is probably better than Tifa's STMR. Like, obviously, if you're not fighting dragons or reapers, then Tifa's STMR adds more damage. But I think that because you fight those 2 races often enough, and it's not that much lower attack, I think I would still say this is better overall.
I'll call it about even.
Yeah, unless you're using it on Tifa, obviously. Like, in that case.
Yeah. Or Cloud or whatever, whoever else can get bonus.
Yeah, but,
Zac.
Yeah, and then the last thing that's happening this week, unless you have something else to say about Skye.
Don't think so, but I guess we're now moving on to where are you going to actually use Skye the most.
Yeah, so we got the second run of Clash of Wills. This time they've changed things a little bit. From what I understand, I haven't run it myself yet, Dream. I'm not sure if you have.
I did like one battle of it and got like the first 30 levels of rewards or whatever. From what I
understand, the scoring is now affected by whether or not you get debuffed by the boss.
Yeah, I think they added some extra score parameters.
Yeah, and this boss does ailment and the ailment imperil thing. So this was relevant on a few trials a long time ago, and then they kind of stopped doing it, but now it's back, where if you gear a unit for ailment resistance and then run a buff, then you're still immune to ailments even after the boss imperils your ailment resistance. You cannot gear for 200% resistance. You can't use 2 buffs. The only way to do it is to have the gear and the buff.
Yep. Or innate passive immunity and buff. But yeah, same thing.
Yeah, so, kind of keep an eye out for that, because I think the boss just does, like, imperils every ailment and then spams them AoE. So you got to have somebody that
Yeah,
can give AoE.
Definitely want that passive plus active AoE immunity. And then weakness-wise, they said on the news videos, like, oh, it's a major weakness to wind and a minor weakness to fire and earth, but the difference between them is only like 30%. So,
yeah,
if you want to go fire with Louise and stuff, it's not that much of a loss.
To be fair, like,
innate resistance-wise.
What's the resistance difficulty modifier thing? Like, how much resist does it add again?
I think with both of them together, it was like 105.
So that means that, let's see, if you're doing, sorry, with both, so that means that the boss goes up to, starts at 50 something resist, I think, 30 something.
I don't even know. Like all of the stats and stuff are not yet readily available as of recording time. But
I think there was a pin in the Discord. Sorry, listeners, we're doing this live. Okay, hang on. I found a link. I am assuming that this is his baseline stats with no difficulty modifiers. 85% fire and earth, 55% wind, which means that once you add 105, then if you run 120% in peril, or 130% in peril, then he drops down to, let's see.
Wait, were those them as resistance or weakness?
Resistance. He has 85% fire and earth resist, 55% wind resist. So this means it's actually a pretty big difference, I think.
Weak to anything. Yeah, that's true, because it would be what, like, with 120 in peril, just 15 below those with the modifiers on?
That means he goes down to 40% wind resist and 190 and 70% earth resist. So yeah, you're doing about twice as much damage with wind as with fire or
okay.
earth. And
the gap would narrow slightly with like 130, 135 in perils though.
But it's certainly a case where you want to use wind if at all possible. I'm assuming these numbers I'm seeing in the screenshot are without the resist difficulty modifiers. It could be that's not the case.
Also, you can like mix wind plus fire potentially if you're getting like stronger imperils from one or like higher amp from one.
Yeah, like if you're using Louise, you might want to try imbuing her with wind if you have somebody that can do that easily.
Yeah. Or like for Skye, you might have like her innate wind buffs and stuff on, as well as AoE fire stuff from the rest of your team.
You may want to avoid doing like AoE fire imbue in this case. I'm not sure.
Yeah, possibly. I don't know. Again, we like haven't gone super into depth because it's only a couple days in.
Yeah.
And a lot of the skill set and stuff is still a mystery. There seems to be a lot of like reactionary stuff to like different elements and things from what I've seen.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a pain.
The longer it's been since the first Clash of Wills, the less annoyed I am with the way it turned out. I do think it's way better than Dark Visions, just in a lot of ways. Even just the fact that it's one fight.
Yeah, I'm fine with almost all of it because like the fights are a lot more interesting and like there is more defensive aspects to it. And yeah, it's just one fight that you can work on and stuff and modify and stuff. The one main thing I am still hating is the EX level thing, though.
Yeah, I don't like the EX level thing. I really don't like the fact that single turn burst is still a pretty big part of your score.
Yeah, that's kind of annoying, but
what I would love to see is make it so that instead of having the EX level thing, and instead of having the damage score thing, make it so that there's like a difficulty modifier that removes your 6th unit from the party, and that gives you a flat score bonus, or something like that. And then you can replace the damage score bonus with like, I don't know, is there already a turn count score thing?
I think there is now on this one. There wasn't on Morgana, but it's like, if you do it in less than 10 turns, you get max for it.
That was what I was going to suggest, and that's actually a good idea that they did it. Because I don't want it to be like you have to kill it as fast as you humanly can. I just want it to be like, if you start taking a really long time, you get penalized. And I think below 10 turns gives you no penalty is a perfect solution to that. Good job, Gumi.
I think it's still like, that's long enough for it to kind of just be like a non-issue.
Yeah, I think it's mostly there to stop people from doing like super weird 40 turn strats where it takes a really long time to set up some crazy turn.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, and I also think it's nice that um, keeping it to 10 turns for peak score means that if you're going to try to attempt and iterate, you have like that you have that goal in mind. You know that it's never going to be going to 15 turns. You say, okay, what can I do in 10 turns? And you're not looking at what the boss
Yeah, I
does on
guess
turn
so.
15 and thinking, okay, how do I deal with this?
I think a lot of the time, or at least with Morgana, and I'm not sure if Oster has one that's the same, but it might be where, like, there is a thing on a turn earlier than 10 that you want to kill before it happens anyway.
Yeah.
So,
I wouldn't mind once in a
sort of,
while seeing a Clash of Wills boss that did something sort of the opposite, where like the boss starts out insanely tanky, but relatively weak, and then just gets progressively squishier and harder hitting the longer the fight goes on. So you want to
yeah.
try to endure as long as you can to kill him. But
Mm,
I think it would be fine to have different months of Clash of Wills that had a very different flavor in terms of
yeah.
what you were trying to do.
There's certainly design space that probably won't be used.
I can hope,
But
but
yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, the EX level thing, like, it's been reduced from 18 to 16 with max score, so you can run 2 EX2s and 4 EX3s, but honestly, I don't feel like that helps much, because, like, it feels like this one has really highlighted it for me, because looking at what some other people have run and stuff, I have basically the units that would be like a perfect team for this, but my max EX level of that team is like 9, maybe 10.
oh yeah.
And so it just is gonna suck compared to all the actually high scores. Whereas even in DV, having that perfect team at EX1 is still gonna get me very close to that top potential. And, outside of EX2 abilities and stuff, but that's more down to the units than the content. So yeah, that's really annoying me with this one, to be honest.
Yeah, it's. I think we said this pretty much every time we talked about Clash of Wills. It's there's good ideas here, and I really hope that they keep polishing it and they come up with just stuff to make it generally better.
Mm,
Because
yeah,
it's not bad. It's it's kind of good, but it could be really great, and it's just not there yet.
yeah. Like, obviously, I want to keep the EX level thing to some degree, but until it's down at like 12 or whatever, it feels very restrictive and or just super whale
In some
focused.
ways, having it at 16 might actually be worse for some people because it means that so many more people can cap. So it means that if you're
Yeah,
not
I guess
quite
so.
able to cap, then you're so much lower. It's like those DVs where
Yeah,
like 2,600 people capped, and if you couldn't cap one stage, you were just not in the top 3,000 or something.
yeah. I mean, like last EV was actually an exact example of that for me. Like, I I don't trash super hard on DV, and I normally rank between around like 2,000 to 3,000. Last DV, I actually scored slightly better than I normally do, but I was at like 4,900.
Yeah. The other thing that would make me happy, I guess, is if they just like moved basically all of the rewards to like the milestone rewards, and they made it like maybe add some more tiers that are crazy difficult to unlock, and then just makes it the rankings are like a few random tickets like raid rewards. Nobody cares about those. Um,
Yeah, but that's not going to like, they obviously still need to incentivize people to pull for this stuff and be
I think people
competitive
might
with
get
it.
competitive for the sake of it. I don't know.
Not nearly as competitive though, I don't think. It needs to have like something that at least looks reasonably valuable. But yeah, like a pretty large portion of like the Xenostone is in the ranking rewards and changes per rank, which
Yeah.
is annoying.
Like maybe not even just like take everything out of the ranking rewards, but shift more of it to the milestone rewards and make it clear that the ranking rewards are more for bragging rights. I don't know. I don't think they're going to do that, but I would like it if they did.
Or just make the difference between the tiers smaller or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, again, I think my preferred change would still just be further reduction of the max EX stuff, if not its removal.
Mhm.
Like yeah, just have all of the challenge parameters available, and being able to cap with them all on is that whale ceiling, because that's still going to be really hard to do with how it's currently balanced,
Yeah.
even with like an EX1 team or whatever.
Yeah, but I think we're kind of spinning our
Oh well,
wheels in discussion at this point.
Yeah, it's still certainly nicer to have it than not. It's like it makes the content cycle more interesting than JP's Just DV, and these jokes of 12 race trials every few months
one
that
they
seem
shot
to be
out in
getting.
JP is just...
Yep, it's worse than the first one.
It feels like an early 5-star era event boss from what I've seen of it.
Yeah. With stats much higher.
I mean, even then, it doesn't matter because you would just use dodge. Like that's what people did back then. Like it feels like one of those trials because it's like, oh, look at this boss. It has 15 times higher attack than it should. Let's just use dodge.
Yeah. I more meant from like the defensive side of it. Like those event bosses, you still tend to kill in like a turn or two with a good team, whereas this might hold up for 5 to 10 turns.
A boss that only uses physical attacks and has no accuracy. Why? Why would you make this?
Yeah. No, it's got sealable and reflectable death and single target status ailments.
Why do these things exist? But yeah, that's what we have to look forward to aside from Clash of Wills.
Yeah. Instead of buffing units, can we buff trials?
Yes, please. Alright, I think that's probably all for this week, everybody. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, I think that wraps it up. What are we actually expecting next week? Because I feel like for a few weeks now it's been quite predictable with all the 7R stuff. What's next week? I feel like Sakura has to be within the next 2 weeks, aka
schedule.
Reskinned Nickel. Like, I think we're having like a couple of gap weeks where there might be like Sakura and our next fan design unit, and then next month should be like FF6 stuff and the introduction of everyone's favourite mechanic, Super LB.
I could see them doing FF6 next week. I don't know that it's that likely, but it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
You know what they're going to do?
I think Sakura
they want to put out a really bad banner for the second week of Clash of Wills so that it doesn't create any kind of power creep. So they're going to put out the Type 0 banner.
Sakura. No, that'll be a bit far away.
Yeah, Type 0. I'm calling it now.
Well, actually, no. Hold on, no. If they wanted to have a weak banner without power creep, FF6 would be a better choice than Type 0.
I guess I'm not actually entirely sure what the Type 0 units do, but I've never heard anyone from JP talk about any of them, so...
I mean, it's partly because, there's been less content that wants ice, but Kurosame is basically a stronger ice version of Cyan.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Blue Mage Vina got an NV.
One, but, I think it was a Season 4 thing or something. She got an NVA.
Oh, this is a terrible NV.
Or it might have been Season 3 Story Digest, which we might never get because where's our Season 1 and 2 Story Digest? Why is she a physical chainer? Because she has that sword that she uses in a LB animation for some reason that's literally never come up in the story, I don't think. It's very weird. It's free. But not like the good kind of free. Anyway, we may never see it. Right. Who knows? Yumi doesn't like giving nice things to all units.
I honestly wouldn't mind if we never saw this, to be honest, but yeah. Alright.
It's got like a budget version of Aerith's AoE light amp and imbue.
I guess. Yeah.
I guess. We're trying very hard here.
Alright, yeah. See you next week, everybody.